They laughed at his damaged armor until he took it off, and the hall fell quiet. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy had gathered here, some floating, some walking, others gliding on mechanical limbs. The air buzzed with anticipation, whispers of superiority, and a faint metallic tang from the weapons display racks along the walls. Among all the gleaming figures, there was one who stood out for the wrong reasons. He walked slowly, almost cautiously, down the central corridor. His armor was scratched, dented, and mismatched. Where most delegates gleamed with polished alloys and perfectly aligned panels, his armor looked like it had survived a dozen battles without a single repair. One gauntlet had a jagged edge, one leg plate was slightly bent, the chest plate bore the faded emblem of Earth, nearly hidden under scratches. Every pair of eyes turned toward him. Some aliens whispered to each other. One of the taller, multi-limbed delegates snorted audibly. "Earth sends that," it hissed. A floating counselor tilted its head and let out a soft laugh, the sound like shattering glass. The human did not respond. He did not quicken his pace or try to hide. Instead, he continued calmly, each step deliberate. The clatter of his worn boots echoed in the hall, loud against the murmurs of ridicule. By the time he reached the center of the hall, the laughter had grown, filling the chamber. One of the alien delegates, a creature with translucent skin and bright veins, stepped forward. "You call that armor?" it demanded, voice sharp and cutting. "Your species is supposed to be warriors, yet you come dressed like scavengers." A wave of laughter followed. Some delegates tapped their weapons against the floor in amusement. Others murmured that humans had never been taken seriously in galactic conflicts. They were clever, yes, stubborn, yes, but fragile, and their technology was outdated compared to the elegant fleets of other species. The human said nothing. He reached the marked circle in the center, where the conclave chair hovered on a levitation platform, glowing softly in blue light. The chair was enormous, a being that stretched nearly 4 meters, its body covered in a crystalline carapace that shimmered as it moved. Its eyes, 3 sets of them, focused on him with cold curiosity. "You are late," the chair's voice resonated through the hall, echoing against the walls. "And your armor," it paused, scanning the scratches, dents, and mismatched plates. "It appears you have lost every battle you fought before even arriving here." The laughter from the crowd intensified. Delegates floated closer, whispering jokes and making gestures that humans would recognize as mockery. The human remained still, his arms resting lightly at his sides. A younger delegate, bright and shiny in gold armor, stepped forward. "Perhaps Earth sends one of their children to represent them," it said, its tone dripping with disdain. "They are known for clever tricks, but clearly not for endurance." Still, the human did not reply. He only looked around the hall, his eyes calm, steady, and unafraid. There was no fear in him, no anger, only an unreadable focus that unnerved the surrounding delegates more than the laughter ever could. The conclave chair tilted slightly. "Explain yourself," it commanded. "Why does a broken soldier represent your species in this assembly? Speak quickly or leave." The human shifted slightly. He reached toward the seams of his chest plate, his movements deliberate, slow, almost ceremonial. Every pair of eyes followed him, the laughter slowly dying into murmurs of confusion. Whispers turned into stunned silence in small pockets. "What is he doing?" one of the delegates asked quietly, its antennae twitching nervously. He did not answer. With careful precision, he unlocked the clasps of his gauntlets, one by one. Metal clinked against metal, loud and deliberate. The hall seemed to grow quieter, though no one dared speak. The delegates leaned forward slightly, curiosity replacing mockery. Next came the chest plate. Another series of clicks and the plate slid slightly, revealing worn layers of clothing beneath, fabric torn and patched repeatedly. The human's body underneath was not fragile. It was scarred, heavily scarred. The marks were not new, they were old, healed over decades of battles. His arms bore thick layers of sinew, reinforced with artificial fibers that glimmered faintly in the light. A few delegates gasped. It was not weakness under the armor, it was something else entirely. Something no one had expected. The human did not flinch. He continued to remove his armor piece by piece, standing fully exposed to the hall, and with every layer removed, the laughter faded further. The scars told a story the delegates did not want to hear, a story of endurance, survival, and battles that no other species had survived. The chair tilted its crystalline head. "You survived?" it asked slowly. The question hung in the air, heavy and incredulous. The human nodded once calmly. "I survived," he said simply. "I survived because I adapt. I survive because I keep going when all else fails. And this armor was never my protection. It was my restraint." A murmur spread through the crowd, growing into a tense silence. Delegates looked at one another, trying to reconcile what they had laughed at only moments ago with the truth before them. The human stood tall, unarmed, unarmored, and yet every being in the hall suddenly felt the weight of his presence. The conclave chair's three sets of eyes widened slightly. For the first time in its long existence, it paused, unable to dismiss this human so easily. It had seen many species rise, fall, and stumble. But it had never seen one like this, one that could laugh at death, survive impossible odds, and appear so calm in the face of mockery. The hall was silent now. Not a whisper, not a giggle, not a tap of a weapon. Even the younger delegate in gold armor had frozen, its mouth slightly open in disbelief. The human's gaze swept across the room slowly, deliberately, as if measuring the reactions of every species present. He did not smile, but there was a quiet authority in the way he held himself, a sense that everything he had endured, everything he had survived, had brought him here not just as a representative, but as a living warning. He lifted the last piece of armor from his shoulder, letting it clatter softly on the floor. Every eye followed the motion, and every mind in the hall began to rethink what they knew about humans. The chair spoke again, more slowly this time, its voice edged with curiosity rather than derision. "You are unusual." The human nodded once. "I am human," he said, "and what you see is only what you can survive. The rest, you will not understand unless you face it yourself." For a moment, the hall was completely still. Even the hum of the station's life support systems seemed to fade into the background. The laughter had disappeared entirely. What remained was tension, the kind that comes before a storm, the kind that makes every being in the room aware that the simple act of removing armor had changed the entire dynamic of the conclave. The human remained standing there, calm, patient, unbroken. And the hall waited. The hall remained silent. The human veteran, standing in the center, unclad in his damaged armor, seemed to radiate a quiet strength that few could comprehend. The delegates had laughed a few moments ago, mocking Earth's representative as a primitive, broken warrior. Now the laughter had vanished, replaced with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and disbelief. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a voice, a sharp, mechanical timbre, broke the silence. "You survived?" asked the multi-limbed delegate from the Trellith system, its many eyes blinking rapidly in confusion. "How? Your species is small, fragile, your armor is barely functional, and yet you survived." The human's gaze did not waver. He was calm, almost serene, as if this question had been asked hundreds of times before. "Yes," he said, his voice steady. "I survived because survival is not about the tools you wear. It's about what you carry inside, the will to endure, the ability to adapt when all else fails. I survived when fleets fell, when worlds burned, when those who should have led me died or ran, and I walked out alive." The hall stirred. A murmur rippled through the crowd, the sound hesitant, like creatures testing water they were unsure of. Some delegates whispered to each other. Others floated slightly higher, adjusting their positions to get a better view. Every eye was fixed on the human. The conclave chair inclined its crystalline head. "Walked out," it asked. "You are claiming you survived entire battles, entire wars without support." The human nodded once. "Not without support," he corrected. "With support, but not the kind you think. My support came from my people, my team, my adaptability, from knowing that when everything fails, the human mind and body do not give up." A few of the delegates began to speak at once, questioning, doubting, challenging. The young delegate in golden armor piped up again, voice trembling slightly. "Your armor was damaged badly. Your body it is scarred. How could someone in such a state still fight at your level?" The human flexed his arm slowly, letting the hall see the reinforced fibers beneath his skin. His scars were deep, but they were not weaknesses, they were proof. Proof of survival, proof of combat, proof that humanity could endure situations that would have broken most other species. "My armor was never meant to protect me completely," he said. "It limited me. It slowed me down. It made others think I was weaker than I was. And they underestimated me." The murmurs grew louder. The Trellith delegate raised one limb and pointed at him. "You are enhanced," it asked, its voice filled with suspicion. "This is unnatural. Your body, your strength, it is beyond normal humans." The human shook his head. "Not enhanced, adapted. My body healed itself. It strengthened itself. Through medicine, through training, through necessity. When a human faces impossible odds, we find ways to survive that other species never imagine." Some of the delegates leaned back, the disbelief clear on their faces. Others began to record or transmit the moment. Holograms captured the human's body, the scars, the faint shimmer of his reinforced tissues. It was a spectacle, a revelation, a warning. The human continued, his voice low but carrying across the hall. "You see this armor? It hid nothing but restraint. Every dent, every scratch, every mark, this is the story of survival. Every battle I fought, every fleet I escaped, every mission I completed when all others failed. That is the real armor of a human, not metal, not alloy, not weapons, us." The conclave chair tilted slightly. Its multiple eyes seemed to focus intently. "You are claiming your species is underestimated," it asked. "That you are capable of feats we do not understand." "I am claiming the truth," the human replied. "Humans survive. Humans endure. Humans adapt. And when you face humanity in a war, you will see that what you call weakness is only the surface. Beneath it lies resilience that cannot be measured by your sensors or your machines." The young delegate in golden armor swallowed nervously. "But your fleet," it stammered. "Reports say Earth has no large ships, no powerful fleets. Your technology is old. How could you survive wars of this scale?" The human's gaze swept across the hall. It was calm, unwavering, and yet there was a spark of warning in his eyes. "You do not survive with technology alone. You survive with strategy, intelligence, and the unwillingness to give up. When our fleets were broken, when our allies were dead, when the galaxy thought we had failed, humans fought anyway. We improvised, we adapted, we survived." A hush fell over the delegates. The story he was telling was not just about him. It was about every human who had ever faced impossible odds and survived. Every mission that seemed hopeless, every battle lost, every war that others wrote off as a failure, they had survived anyway. The human's voice dropped slightly. "Do you know why I removed my armor?" he asked. The question was calm, but it carried weight. "Because you laughed. Because you needed to see what stands behind Earth's borders, not the metal we wear, not the machines we build. The human itself." Gasps echoed through the hall. The murmurs turned into whispers of fear and awe. Some delegates floated back slightly, their confidence shaken. Others leaned forward, trying to understand the truth. The human was standing there, scarred, wounded, and yet more imposing than any warrior in perfect armor. "You speak as if humans are gods," one of the older delegates murmured, almost to itself. "Yet, this one is human." The human's lips curved slightly into what could be called a faint smile. "We are not gods," he said softly. We are humans, and the galaxy has never truly seen what that means. A series of holograms activated across the hall, showing battles, fleets destroyed, worlds defended, and soldiers surviving impossible odds. The human's history unfolded in vivid detail. He had been part of missions where the majority of his allies had died, yet he had completed every objective. His body bore the proof, the scars, the reinforced muscle, the resilience that no armor could provide. Delegates shifted uncomfortably. Many had assumed humans were fragile, clever, but weak. Now, they were forced to reconsider. They had mocked what they thought was weakness, and instead, they had witnessed endurance beyond imagination. The conclave chair spoke again, its crystalline voice steady but tinged with curiosity. Your species adapts beyond expectation. You survive where others perish. You fight where others flee. And yet you are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most technologically advanced. How do you endure? The human's voice was calm, almost gentle, but every word carried weight. Because we refuse to stop. Because we endure when others cannot. Because the human spirit is stronger than any armor, faster than any machine, and more enduring than any fleet. When others would give up, we do not. That is what you are seeing. That is why you laughed. And that is why you should listen carefully. The hall remained silent. Even the Trellith delegate, usually brash and mocking, floated quietly, watching. Every species present was recalculating. Everything they had assumed about humans was being challenged. Finally, the human looked down at the pieces of armor he had removed. The dents, scratches, and mismatched panels gleamed faintly under the hall lights. This armor, he said, voice low, was never my strength. It was a mask. I wore it to survive in a galaxy that would never believe a human could endure what we do. Now you have seen the truth. Judge us if you will, but know this, humans survive, always. Another pause. The hall seemed to breathe as if waiting for something to happen next. The silence was heavy, filled with tension. The human's words had shifted the mood entirely. The delegates were no longer laughing. Some were afraid, some were in awe, some simply did not know what to think. And then quietly a soft alarm echoed through the hall. A subtle, almost imperceptible warning signal, but enough to draw attention. The chair's eyes flickered toward the displays. An alert, it said. From the edge of known space, the human's gaze lifted, calm and precise. They are coming back, he said quietly. And when they arrive, you will see what humans do when faced with impossible odds. The delegates looked at him, realization dawning. The laughter, the mockery, it had ended. And now the galaxy was about to witness the beginning of something much larger than a single human, much larger than a single armor. The human stood tall, scarred, unarmored, and unafraid. And in that moment, every being in the hall understood that humanity was not fragile, not clever in ways that others underestimated, but relentless. The hall had laughed at him once. Now they were silent, waiting for the next act to unfold. A test that would show exactly what it meant to face humanity at its finest. The hall of the conclave was tense, the weight of silence pressing down on every delegate. The human stood at the center, scarred and unarmored, his gaze calm and unwavering. Every eye in the room was fixed on him. The laughter that had once echoed here was gone. Now, the only sound was the soft hum of the station's life support systems, and the faint alarm from the edge of known space. The alert was more than a warning. It was a signal of something the galaxy had long feared, the remnants of a force thought defeated decades ago. Fleets that had vanished, civilizations that had been wiped from records, enemies whose name alone inspired nightmares across multiple star systems. And yet, the human did not flinch. The conclave chair's 3 sets of crystalline eyes flickered rapidly. You claim to be human. And yet you speak as if you have already faced this threat. Tell us how. The human's jaw tightened slightly. Because I have, he said. We faced them once before. My fleet was destroyed. My allies were killed. My mission should have ended in failure, but I survived. I adapted, and now I am ready again. The Trellith delegate floated slightly higher, its multiple limbs twitching nervously. You speak of survival as if it is instinct, but your species it is small. You cannot compete with fleets, weapons, and shields designed to crush entire worlds. How do you expect to resist this threat? The human smiled faintly, though it did not reach his eyes. I do not rely on size. I do not rely on numbers. I rely on strategy, adaptation, and the willingness to endure when others would fall. You will see. The hall was quiet, every delegate hanging on his words. Then the human turned toward the nearest comm panel and activated it. Holoscreens lit up, displaying star charts, fleet movements, and systems under potential threat. The holograms shifted rapidly, showing precise calculations and predictions. Observe, he said. These are not guesses. These are the outcomes of human thinking under pressure. These are the strategies we develop when faced with annihilation. Every path, every contingency, every possibility has been considered, and everyone relies on our ability to survive, adapt, and fight when all else fails. Delegates leaned in, their skepticism giving way to curiosity. Some, who had mocked the human earlier, now watched in quiet awe. The screens showed simulations of battles that would have destroyed conventional fleets in moments. Yet in each scenario, the humans' forces found ways to endure, to strike back, to turn despair into advantage. A murmur spread through the hall. Even the conclave chair seemed momentarily caught off guard. Your species is remarkable, it said slowly. But simulations are not reality. They do not account for fear, chaos, or the unknown. You still rely on fragile ships and humans. One misstep and the human turned fully toward the chair, his voice firm. That is exactly why you misunderstand humans. We do not rely solely on technology. We rely on ourselves, on each other, on our ability to endure what no one else can. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Then, with a calm gesture, he activated the next hologram. This one displayed his own body, overlaid with past injuries, enhancements, and adaptations. Delegates gasped. This was no ordinary human. His body had been rebuilt by necessity, modified to endure extreme conditions, strengthened beyond normal limits. Each scar, each reinforcement, each patchwork of survival told a story that the galaxy had underestimated for far too long. You see this, he said quietly. This is not weakness. This is experience. Every scar, every mark is proof that humanity survives where others perish. Every failure is an opportunity. Every loss is a lesson. And every human carries the potential to turn the impossible into reality. The room was silent, not one being dared to interrupt. Even the golden-armored delegate, usually so quick with insults, now seemed small, humbled by the presence of someone who had lived through wars that spanned entire star systems. Then, the human's gaze shifted toward the nearest viewport. Beyond the station, distant stars glittered, and among them, tiny flashes indicated the movement of something massive, ships, too large and too fast to be ordinary patrols. Fleets that had been presumed destroyed were returning. The Conclave's defenses, even in their combined might, would not be enough without preparation. We do not wait for death, the human said softly. We act before it arrives. We adapt. We survive. And when necessary, we fight in ways that no one expects. The chair inclined its head, its crystalline voice calm but edged with urgency. Then show us. Show the conclave the full extent of human capability. The human nodded once. With deliberate precision, he reached for the pieces of armor he had removed earlier. Unlike before, this time there was no hesitation. The armor clinked and locked into place, not as a barrier but as a statement. Every dent, every scratch, every mark of survival gleamed under the hall lights. He did not need the armor. It was part of the story he told the galaxy with his presence. The hall held its collective breath. The human moved to the command console at the center, his fingers flying across holographic controls, redirecting resources, rerouting power, and coordinating fleets. Alien delegates watched in amazement as he planned maneuvers with unparalleled efficiency. Every choice was precise, calculated, and adaptive. It was as if he had been born to command in chaos. "You are efficient beyond measure," the Trellith delegate muttered, its voice trembling. "Your mind, your instincts, it is unlike anything we have ever seen." The human did not respond. He continued working, his mind anticipating movements before they happened, predicting outcomes that seemed impossible. Holographic fleets shifted and danced, each maneuver designed to survive against a threat that no one else could face. Finally, he straightened and turned to face the hall. "This is what humans do," he said simply. "We survive when others cannot, we fight when others flee, and when the impossible arrives, we adapt and endure. That is why you should never underestimate us." A low hum of realization passed through the room. The conclave delegates, who had once laughed at the damaged armor, now understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. They were not looking at a broken human. They were looking at the embodiment of resilience, the culmination of survival instinct honed over centuries of impossible trials. The chair spoke, its voice quiet but resolute. "Perhaps the galaxy has misunderstood humans. Perhaps we have underestimated the potential within your species. Show us now what you can do." The human nodded once more. "I will, but know this, what you see is only the beginning. Humans endure, humans adapt, and when the universe tries to break us, we do not fall, we rise." As he moved to finalize fleet positions, the distant flashes outside the station grew brighter, closer. The threat was imminent. And yet the human remained calm, composed, and unafraid. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would do so again. The hall, once filled with laughter and mockery, was now silent. Every delegate waited. Every species watched. Every eye was on the human who had removed his armor and revealed the truth. And in that silence, the galaxy began to understand something profound. Humanity was not fragile. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was relentless, adaptive, and unyielding. The enemy would soon arrive. And when they did, they would meet the full measure of what it meant to face humans at their finest. The conclave had laughed at the human once. Now they waited, and the universe held its breath. The hall of the Galactic Defense Conclave had grown tense beyond measure. Silence stretched between the delegates, a silence heavy with awe, fear, and expectation. The human veteran stood at the center, scarred and scarred again by experience, his armor back in place, each dent and scratch gleaming like a badge of survival. Beyond the station's windows, the distant stars flickered, and faint, ominous lights revealed the first movements of the returning enemy fleet. No one spoke. The galaxy waited. The human's eyes scanned the holographic displays before him, assessing, calculating, anticipating. Every fleet position, every possible strike route, every weak point in the approaching enemy formation passed through his mind like clockwork. His hands moved quickly, setting defenses, redirecting resources, and coordinating allied fleets across dozens of star systems. You can do all this alone," whispered one of the alien delegates, barely audible. Its voice trembled with disbelief. "How can a single human command so many fleets and make such precise decisions?" The human's jaw tightened, and he looked at the delegate calmly. "I am not alone," he said. "Every human who has ever faced impossible odds acts the same way. Every human thinks beyond survival, beyond expectation. That is what makes us dangerous. That is what makes us endure. That is what makes us unstoppable." Outside, the first enemy vessels appeared, their shapes strange and terrifying. They were enormous, far larger than any fleet that the Conclave had deployed in decades. Their hulls shimmered with energy fields that distorted light and masked weak points. Ships that had been considered extinct in the galaxy's records had returned, armadas thought lost in time, now moving with silent, terrifying precision toward the station. The conclave chair's voice cut through the tense silence. Your species has survived what no one else could. You faced this force once before. You claim you can stop them again. How? The human's gaze was steady, unwavering. Because humans do not wait to be crushed. We adapt, we innovate, we endure, and when others flee, we fight. The alarm blared softly now, a clear indication that the enemy fleet had begun maneuvers. The holographic displays flickered, showing the enemy formation advancing with deadly speed. Yet the human remained calm, his mind moving faster than the simulations, faster than the sensors could calculate. He activated the defense systems of the station, rerouted power to the shields, and established relay points for allied fleets. Each action was precise, deliberate, and adaptive. Even the aliens watching were forced to admit that the humans' coordination was unlike anything they had ever seen. Then he spoke, voice calm but filled with authority. You will see what humans do when faced with impossible odds. We do not panic, we do not flee, we survive and we strike when the moment is right. The first wave of enemy ships entered range. Energy beams lanced out across space, striking Allied vessels and the station's outer defenses. Explosions bloomed like supernovae in the void. Most species would have panicked, their fleets scattering, their command structures collapsing. But the humans' fleets did not falter. He adjusted the positioning of ships in real time, anticipating enemy movements that no one else could predict. Strikes that would have destroyed conventional vessels were dodged, countered, or absorbed. Fleets that had been on the brink of annihilation were saved by maneuvers that seemed impossible. The hall watched, mesmerized, as the human turned a battle that seemed hopeless into a demonstration of precision, endurance, and strategic brilliance. Even the alien commanders who had mocked him earlier now followed his orders with awe. Human strategy, muttered one of the older delegates, it is unparalleled. The human's voice was calm as he issued commands. Focus on their weak points, adapt to their changes. Do not follow patterns, think, move, survive. That is what humans do. Another wave of enemy ships attempted to flank the Allied fleet. Sensors predicted near-total destruction, yet the human anticipated it. He redirected smaller, faster ships to intercept, set traps in the void of space, and used the enemy's own momentum against them. Explosions flared across the battlefield as enemy ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. The hall erupted with gasps. Even the conclave chair, composed and authoritative, seemed taken aback. Your species is remarkable, it said slowly. I have seen many warriors, many fleets, many civilizations, but humanity is beyond what we imagined. The human did not respond with pride. He merely continued, calm, commanding, and focused. His body moved fluidly beneath the armor, enhanced by years of adaptation and experience. Every scar, every mark, every reinforcement beneath his skin was evidence of survival and resilience. As the battle continued, the human coordinated multiple fleets across dozens of star systems, adapting in real time to enemy maneuvers. Each attack was anticipated, each movement countered, each fleet preserved. Where most commanders would panic, humans thrived. Where others would retreat, humans endured. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The enemy, massive and seemingly unstoppable, was gradually being pushed back. Ships that had once been lost to history were now falling before the combined force of human adaptation and allied coordination. The hall watched in awe. Delegates who had once mocked the human armor now whispered among themselves, their voices low, tinged with fear and respect. The golden-armored delegate looked pale, shaking slightly. I did not believe them. I thought humans were weak. I was wrong, it admitted quietly. The human, seeing the enemy falter, issued the final commands. Strike now, push them back completely. Leave nothing to doubt our will to endure. The Allied fleets moved in perfect harmony, striking the enemy with coordinated precision. The enemy, massive and terrifying, began to collapse under the relentless human strategy. Ships fell, formations broke, and the returning fleets were scattered, defeated. The galaxy had witnessed an impossible victory, one that few believed could be achieved. The hall erupted into stunned silence. The human had not only survived the enemy, they had defeated them with strategy, endurance, and resilience. No alien delegate could argue against it. Humanity had proven beyond question that they were a force to be respected, feared, and admired. The conclave chair inclined its crystalline head, voice calm but filled with authority. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated humans. Perhaps we have misjudged what your species is capable of. You have demonstrated not only survival but mastery. You have shown endurance that no one else possesses. The human nodded once, removing his helmet to reveal a face marked with scars, sweat, and quiet determination. I am not unique, he said softly. Every human carries this potential. Every human can endure, adapt, and survive. You laughed at my armor at what you thought was weakness. Now you have seen the truth. Humans survive, humans endure, and humans rise when all else falls. The delegates who had once mocked him now bowed slightly, their eyes filled with respect and awe. Some whispered to themselves, recording every word for the galactic archives. Others simply stared, realizing that they had misjudged an entire species for centuries. The human replaced his helmet, the pieces of armor clicking softly into place. He looked out the viewport at the retreating enemy fleet, then back at the hall. The galaxy may test us again, he said, but know this, when it does, humanity will endure, humanity will adapt, and humanity will rise. The hall was silent once more, but this time it was not tense. It was filled with recognition. Every species present had witnessed the impossible. Every being in the room had seen what it truly meant to face humans at their finest. The conclave chair finally spoke again, its crystalline voice calm and resolute. Let it be known, it said. The species called humans is not to be underestimated. They endure when all others fail. They survive when all others perish. And they rise when the galaxy seems lost. The human stood in the center of the hall, his armor damaged, his body scarred, his presence commanding. The delegates no longer laughed. They no longer whispered mockery. They watched in awe, understanding that what they had witnessed was not luck, not chance, not accident. It was humanity at its finest. And as the human turned and walked toward the exit, the hall fell completely silent. For the first time, the galaxy understood the simple truth. When a human removes their armor, it is not a sign of weakness. It is a warning, because what stands beneath endures, always. The galaxy had laughed once. Now it bowed in recognition, respect, and a quiet fear. Humanity had proven itself, and the universe would never forget it.